Hello there, welcome again. This is Michael Bird and Nick McDonald, the team behind teacherlearning.org, and we're launching a series of podcasts to try to spread the discussion that we're interested in having about teaching and all things education related. Now, one of the things that I'd particularly like to ask Nick about is something I don't know very much about at all. And that is the Steiner approach to education. Now, Rudolf Steiner was a sort of a German visionary from, I think he was German. I mean, he may have
Austrian,
moved
actually.
around a little bit. Maybe there was a bit of Austrian and Swiss or something in there. But anyway, he was definitely of that from that cultural heritage. And he launched the anthroposophy movement, which was, I suppose it sort of blurred the lines. I think it's fair to say between science and religion, and and I think coming out of that was a very particular approach to the education of children. So now, Nick, you've had the experience of having of teaching in a Steiner school, and I wanted to ask you a few questions about it. Really, did you find that the approach that was evident in that school, and presumably in Steiner schools generally, did you find that resonated with your own approaches, your own sort of aspirations for teaching?
Yes, it did. When I became a teacher, I found that I had a view as to what teaching should be like. Maybe it was based on my own schooling when I was a child. Um, but I definitely found that the mainstream sector, which I naturally started in, was not really what I thought it was, or what I thought what I thought it should be. It didn't resonate with my own experience, but also a lot of having come from industry, I found that the majority, if not all, of my previous experience was largely not welcomed in the state sector.
Or
Um,
not deemed relevant, maybe?
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
possibly not deemed relevant. Yes, or a hindrance even
Right.
to me being a teacher. And I found that my experience in a Steiner Waldorf school, I suddenly found that yes, it did resonate. It was exactly what I thought teaching should be. And what I mean by that is it was largely child-centered. So everything was much more driven towards the needs of the child, the children in front of you, and meeting the curriculum, but also meeting the child very strongly. So that was absolutely key. And I also found that they welcomed the experience of having done something else in life.
Okay, that's really interesting. So what do they do that's different? How can you just kind of give us, I don't know, a series of sort of three or four bullet points or something that
Hmm.
that was different? How would a Steiner school approach things differently from a state school?
Well, there are a number of things that strike you almost immediately. At interview, I was able to see these things, and then having worked there for a while, I was then able to see many more things. Not in any particular order, but the things that really struck me was the lesson structure, the structure of the day. Rather than having subject lessons taught with the children moving around the school, even in the secondary age group, the children stay in the class. So that's one thing, but that also means that the first 2 hours of the day are devoted to a number of things, which include what we call main lesson blocks. And these main lesson blocks are structured so you have about 10 or 11 of those a year, roughly. And you spend 3 or 4 weeks going into a topic very deeply. And this allows, you can imagine, this allows this gives you the time to to understand some new content in that lesson, and then recall that content the next day, and then the day after that, you're starting to make that learning into something more solid in your mind. So there's this kind of 3-day cycle of when you pick up new content, and then you recall that new content and do something with it, with the hands often. And if that's not possible, it might involve a drawing or an experiment or an experience. And trips are related to these main lesson blocks as well. So the main lesson is the fundamental thing that's different. And in the lower and middle school, which would be largely Key Stage 1 and 2 is the lower school, Key Stage 3 is the middle school, you have one teacher delivering all of that information. On the whole, not always. As you get higher up the school, it's very much more then specialist driven. Some Steiner schools do focus on GCSEs, do those, and others do a certificate, a qualification which universities recognise. So the main lesson, I think, is the fundamental thing. The whole approach as well, the second thing I would say is it's very much phenomenal, based on phenomena, a phenomenological approach to learning. So it is genuinely by experience and then recall. So there are various pedagogical techniques, such as going from a concrete to a pictorial to an abstract. Very easy to do that in this school, very easy. Another big difference is the children themselves are very open to learning, because they've had this approach right the way from kindergarten, often right the way through to the secondary area, which is Key Stage 3 and 4 is principally where my experience lives. It just gives the pupils a very solid experience. I think.
I mean, just picking up on that one, would you say the difference in the pupils' approach to their own education is actually because of the education itself, or is it because it attracts a certain type of pupil who is more likely to be self-motivated and reflective and so on? I mean, is it easy for you to discern which is the case?
I think it's more a product of the approach itself. I'm not ruling out the fact that the child, or more to the point, the parents might be more interested in that approach. That certainly plays a part. But I would say that no, I would say largely the result of having gone through that education from an early stage, you feel the pupils feel clearly very calm about their education. But because you have the same teacher for such a long period of time, you know that there's somebody there for you as a pupil. You know somebody cares. You know, it's almost as if it's it's tapping into Maslow's hierarchy of needs, or some basic thing that the brain needs. The brain needs to feel happy, and the limbic brain needs to feel that learning can progress when everything else is all calm, and you get that calmness because you're with one teacher for a lot of the time, even in the middle school. I think it does have an influence. So I would say it's not exclusively, but I would say it's definitely more about the education. Yes.
So, I mean, it sounds to me though that these are things that the state sector could do. If it, I mean, there's nothing written into, edicts about how state schools should be run that forbids them from doing any of this. So, I mean, would you say that there are some important lessons that the state sector could learn from the Steiner approach as far as you've experienced it.
Yes, definitely, yes. If if the system is thinking about the child, if the system is looking, as we spoke about in the last podcast, about emergent practice, if the children know they're being listened to, and that has an influence over what the teacher does next, the student will feel empowered. Yes, like they do at Steiner schools generally. The children feel empowered, and I know this works because during my time there, I've had the privilege of speaking to people who've left the school and who come back and give talks to the school, and they talk about how what a fantastic environment it is for learning, and they all go on to achieve things which fit them and their personality and their desires. They all and employers and colleges where they go to next tend to say things like, we will always take people from your school because they are so mature and so rounded, so well rounded. And yeah, I think absolutely. Yeah.
Fascinating. Well, I'm sure this is a subject that we're going to be talking about more in future podcasts. And I wonder also whether it might change things if the approach, that was taken in that school is then sort of rolled out in policy across all schools, because then it would probably change it again, and it wouldn't quite work in the way that that you might anticipate or that you might expect.
But why would that be a problem?
Well, it's because it's that issue about blueprinting things, isn't it? Is that if you try to learn from one successful approach here, then blueprint that out into policy that then gets rolled out. That was the problem with AFL. They did the big King's Medway, Oxfordshire research project, didn't they, in the late 90s or whenever it was. And they came up with a blueprint. They came up with a kind of, this is what you have to do, so just go away and do it. And it was in the national strategies, wasn't it, where they enshrined it in policy. And
I don't think that was ever the intention of Black and William, though, was it?
Oh no, it was of course not. No, absolutely, it was the
it was the way it was taken on by government, essentially.
It was because what they did. I think it was Beth Ann Marshall who said this. It was because the government implemented the practice and the letter of AFL, and there wasn't any consideration about the spirit or the theory behind it. And of course, if people don't understand that, then they will produce all sorts of subverted practices which kind of conform to the letter, but actually don't correspond at all to the aspiration or the spirit of what was intended. So my worry, I suppose, is that with you see a really good example of school practice or pedagogy located in a school, and there is a danger in just bottling that and then putting it into a blueprint and then rolling it out, to scale, across a whole sector. I think it needs, educational change needs to be done more with consideration for the diversity and the different levels of institutional practice that there are. Anyway, interesting, very, very, very interesting. So thank you very much for listening. I'm sure we will keep returning to this, and I will be trying to find out more myself about Steiner's approach to schooling. I don't know very much about it at all. Okay, thank you very much, Nick. Bye for now.
All right, bye for now. Yeah.